Okay. All right. Thank you for everyone being here. I'm really excited to have Benoit Reinards here. He's currently in Montreal, although as we were discussing, he's originally from Belgium, and he does a lot of international work. He's working as the country manager for Canada at Boardio. Boardio. Now that's what I don't know how to pronounce. Is it
Boardio.
Boardio or Boardio?
Boardio.
Boardio. Okay, great. And so he's got over 15 years of experience working with multinationals, MSCs, economic development organizations. Then he helps companies expand across borders. And so, as you know, in order to be a successful startup, you have to go across borders. Basically, you have to. He specializes in Europe and North America and connects them with the right people so that they have who they need in order to support them. So he's known for his collaborative bridge building approach. Reinards operates at the intersection of corporate strategy, innovation, and international growth. All right, Benoit, go ahead
Thank you.
and start when you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Martha. Yeah, so when Martha approached me, I like to help companies, first of all, with their internationalization plan. And so my background is indeed, I used to work for the Belgian government in New York, where I helped companies with their internationalization plans within to the USA, in fact, from Belgium or Europe in general, which might give a perspective on. Sometimes I might talk about US experiences, and sometimes I might talk about other experiences that I have. So um, I have a little bit of a slideshow that I'm going to present. I kept it very short because I prefer to work more on an interactive level. I like to talk to the companies that have questions normally. So if you have anything that you want to address or you have a specific question, I'll try to help where possible and give you my opinion on it. And so there will be plenty of time to talk about things that you would like to address. Of course, internationalization is not rocket science. There's a lot that comes to it. And I'll give you a little bit of a general overview to start with. What do you need to think of? And then I'll present a little bit on how Boardio does it and why I support Boardio in this field in Canada. So here we go. So preparation, of course, is the key word. As you know, if you want to go international, first you have to really understand your own business before you can make that step. So typically, a company when they think about going international, it's because their current market is maybe too limited, or maybe they've already have a large market share in the local market, and they need to find maybe other markets or expand to other regions in the world. So what is the motivation of your company to go to another country? Is it just because you want to have more revenue? Is it because there's an opportunity that came, or there's plenty of motivations that you can have to do this? Um, Another thing that you really have to think of at that moment is, do we have the runway? Do we have the finances, for instance, to do this for a number of years? Because, like, for instance, a Belgian company that wanted to go to the US, of course, the US is a different structure in fees. You need to have some capital. Uh, to maybe talk to lawyers, maybe to a bookkeeper or a CPA, and that has a certain cost to it. Of course, also if you set up an office, if that would be the choice of way to work, and because I'll discuss that later. But if you would set up an office, of course, you have to make sure that can we pay for the office, can we pay for the people there, and that you at least have the runway to do it for. I would always say 2 to 3 years at least, if you think about a market like the US. So that's really critical. Can we put those financial resources on the side? On the other hand, on the slide it says support. Do we have the people to support our step there? Like also to give an example, if you're a European company and you let's say that you work in software, there's a technical aspect to it. So you need to have people that can support if there are questions from, for instance, the US. If you have customers that are based out of New York or they're based out of LA, there's a different timeline. There's people work on different hours. So do we have like a support that can help us? How do we do that? Are we going to do that locally? Do we keep that in Europe, or are we going to outsource that to a company elsewhere, or are we going to have our own support, for instance, system that we create in the local office? If it would be, for instance, the United States, are we going to hire people in the US to do the support? So those are kind of questions that you need to address before you take that step, and or you have to have an idea about it. Another thing is, of course, market fit. Does the product how that we if it's a product, does it fit the market that we're going to go to? Is there a demand for it? So those are the typical questions that you would ask. Very simple. I think everybody that already went through an internationalization project has those questions in mind, I think. But still, it's really important that you address those before taking that step. A second part of the preparation is, of course, market research, which can be very easy, and people sometimes forget to really pay attention to it. But you really have to understand the competitors that are there. Are there competitors? For instance, I worked for a company in software, and when I asked, are there competitors, the reaction I got like, oh, but we're unique. It's just because they did not do the market research. So they didn't know that there were competitors. They didn't know that there were certain software providers that did exactly the same as they did, and they already had a better plan and a better unique selling proposition. So I think that sometimes companies lack in timing to research a little bit about how do other companies address the market, what is already in place. For instance, on a marketing level as well, if you have a website, what SEO words, SEO words can we use? What keywords can we use? What do our competitors use, for instance? Because that's also critical. If you, for instance, go to a North American market, marketing is really important. In Europe, it's a little less. Marketing is really important in North America. So how do we address that? What channels are we going to choose? What do our competitors use as channels? So that's really important to understand. Of course, there are restrictions, and there can be restrictions on a regulatory basis. There can be on a technical level. Logistics wise, for instance, if, for instance, we're talking about a product instead of a service, the product needs to get to the place where you have to deliver it. So how are we going to do that? Which port are we going to go to? On a technical level, are there differences in, for instance, is there a calculation of a tax? I'm thinking of the US, you have a sales tax. How is that incorporated in our offering? Also, per state, there's a different sales tax. So how can we make sure that technically this aligns to the product that we're offering or the service that we're offering? And of course, regulatory that you have to accommodate all laws from the different states. For instance, if you go to the US, or if a Mexican market is probably different than the US market, different laws there as well. Canada, for instance, you have privacy laws that you have to abide to. So that's you have to know that as a company before you go to a certain market. And then, yeah, cultural differences. That's of course, especially when you go to, for instance, the US market. I always give the same example when I was presenting to companies in the US is at a certain point, IKEA, they saw an uptick in sales of a certain vase, and they didn't know where it came from. So they did some research on it, and it it was because the Americans thought that it wasn't a vase, but they thought it was a cup, like was a glass cup to drink off. So that's they they're used to larger sizes. So it's always a funny story. So I like to use that as a cultural difference. So what are the cultural differences that are in the market that you're going to? Like if you have to network, there's certain topics probably that you won't be able to talk about. So how can I incorporate that into my sales pitch, let's say? Um, so in here, it's just a very brief overview on all the preparation that needs to be done. These are just a few points that I mentioned on the slide, but there's some other things that you have to look at. And once you've done that, of course, that's where you have to start with creating the strategic plan. So I always suggest to companies to do this because you have something on paper. You have something that you can down the road, 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, you can look at it and say like, okay, this is what we wrote when we went to a different market. Does it still align? Um, did we do changes? Where did we adapt? Did we have to adapt, or did it go better than we expected? So that you have something that you can build on, or that you can move away from, even if you'd like. Of course, a roadmap, it's very similar. You need a timeline, and you need to present numbers. Sorry, you need to present numbers over a certain amount of time. Whether it's a P&L, you could create the P&L. What are the revenues? What are of course, what are the costs that we're going to have? Split it up in operational cost, in sales cost, marketing costs, financials costs. Um, but you have to have something in place. A lot of the government agencies or immigration agencies also ask this. If you, for instance, if you look at European companies that want to go to the North American market, they're going to ask if you want to hire people, they're going to ask for a strategic plan to put that into the immigration process, so that they have a view on how many people are they going to hire? Is this going to be a successful company? How many local people are they going to hire, or are they just going to bring in um, external people? So they want to have a view on that. So it helps to have it already in place, so that you can present that for the immigration case of the people that you want to bring in, if you need to bring in people. Of course, objectives. You need to have your milestones. What do you want to accomplish? Certain KPIs that you want to have. So those are the general things you would also need if you think about internationalization. And then once you have decided and you have a better view on this, what is the way that we want to do this? Are we just going to sell our products or our services from a distance? Are we going to do import and export? Do we want to work with somebody local? Do we want to create a partnership, a joint venture, maybe take over a company, do an acquisition of a company to tap into the market? Or do we really want to set up our own office? Do we want to start with a subsidiary? Do we want to create a corporate entity? Um, what is the legal entity that we want to set up there? So those will have different approaches as well. So for instance, when we made the move, one of the things that was important was we had several board members that were not local; they were international people, and we of course went to the North American market. So we wanted to make sure that their investment was safe. So how do you do that? That's important to know because that decides whether you want to set up a subsidiary or you want to set up a C corp or an S corp, for instance. And then once you've decided on that, yeah, there's a lot of things that you need to adapt. You need to create, yeah, as I said, documentation. The marketing that you're going to use is going to be different. Certain things don't work in a new market. Um, for instance, in the US, the marketing communication is completely different than the European communication. So that's important to know. Product, if you have, for instance, if you're in the food business or food and beverage business, yeah, there's different standards that you have to use for your packaging. So how does this need to be addressed? There's of course a lot of data that you can find on that. But American, the FDA, for instance, is really big on this. So you have to understand what do we have to mention, how do we have to mention it, so that people know where to find this as well. Sorry, I've had a cough over the last week, so I'm still a bit getting better. And then, of course, for instance, what are the other things that we need to know, like banking? How does it work? It's sometimes you think it's easy, but for instance, the US, they still work with checks. Very crazy to understand as a European. Um, I hated it. I must say it's a big word, hate it, but I didn't like to go to a bank, for instance, because I'm used to doing everything online. It's getting better, but still, I don't understand why, for instance, an online transfer, why you have to pay for that. So you have to pay like 25 euros or 25 US dollars for a wire, which doesn't make sense to me because my European brain doesn't say that this is correct. It should be free. So there are typical like also telecommunications. I was surprised that, for instance, the cell phone, you don't always have like access to you could be on a subway or a metro, and then your line just drops. So uh, those are kind of things that you don't expect from a country like the US if you go there. Or maybe other countries that you would go to. So there's certain things. Another thing is, for instance, credit history as a person. That's a personal thing. You have to build up credit history. How do you build up credit history? It's through a credit card. But I can't get a credit card because I don't have credit history. So you're in a vicious circle. So how can we solve this? Again, if you do a switch, for instance, I lived in the US for about 10 years and then I had to go to Canada. Yeah, the credit history agencies, they don't communicate to each other. So I had to restart. So I built credit history in the US. I go to Canada. There's no credit history. So I have to restart from scratch. So those are kind of the things that you don't know if you haven't lived it. But yeah, there's ways around it, and you try to find those ways, and typically you find them or you find somebody that can help you. So that's really important to know. And the last thing I said is, of course, resources, and that falls into what I was just saying is there's a lot of resources that are available that some companies do not know. As I mentioned, I worked for the government of Belgium in the US. Um, the first thing I would do as a company that would go that goes abroad is also tap into those resources, is go to the consulate or reach out to the investment and trade organization of the country that you're in, because they have those resources. They cannot help you with business development. That's not their role. But what they're going to do is they can give you so much information on how to do this They can even do introductions, whether you look for a lawyer or you look for a CPA or you look for a potential customer. They could do the introductions. You will still have to do all the steps to get to the deal, but they can help you by creating networking events, by introducing you, by missions that are organized by the government institutions. So there's a lot of resources that a lot of companies do not use to their benefit, and which I think they should use to their benefit. Um, are there any questions at this point so far? Feel
I've
free
been,
to, yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
And I'll have a,
Thanks. No, great presentation. Maybe a question in case of like a software, a platform, and then like in an app
yeah,
that would be on the App Store and the Google Play Store with integration with Stripe. Would you like see any risk in like launching kind of globally, or like how would you approach that when it's like a SaaS platform? We
yeah,
combining Stripe with all the like legal and like tax thing.
yeah. An app, what I would do is, of course, do you have a beta available already?
Yeah.
So
It,
an app, I would suggest, yeah, you have to find the first people using it. So you have to really have volume of people using the app. So that would be my first focus. So that you're sure that the app, that is something that is needed by people. Um, and then, of course, yeah, you definitely have to adapt to certain payment modules or different modules that people are used to having. So you need to technically make sure that there's integrations. I don't know if you have a current IPA, sorry, API for with to integrate with certain modules. So that's definitely something you have to look into, and then also look for the apps that are used by the users. So if it's in the US, for instance, yeah, I don't know Stripe. I don't know how that works, but if Stripe is a commonly used app, yeah, then you have to say, okay, we need to integrate to Stripe, or we have to make sure that the connection is there, so that users do not they for them it's important that they have a good user experience, and that nothing falls through the gaps, let's say.
hmm No, thank you. And I understand that, but I was wondering more, is there any risk in like deploying globally
For
or
an app, it's less, I think, less. There's less of a risk, because what is your main costs in the app is the development, I guess. But once
Mhm.
you've developed, you have the app. The only thing you'll have to adapt to is to the local regulations, and also maybe the local connectors that you need. For instance, I can say, like in Belgium, you have certain apps that are used for payments. You have like Payconic, for instance. You might not have that particular app in a different country. So what are the most commonly used ones? I would start with those. And then I would adapt if you have certain customers that are really asking for an app and it comes back a lot, then I would also see how can we integrate that. So I would, yeah, I'm a very logical person. So I would do it step by step, look at what are the most important needs for the certain country, and then build from there. And as soon as your business picks up and people pick up and the use of the app is getting more common, then you can look at your roadmap and say, okay, this is what we need in the roadmap. Let's do this over the next 3 to 6 months, or put a timeline on it, and work from there.
Thank you.
I I have some questions. Um, so when I look at a startup and I'm possibly going to be investing in the startup, they're normally a very common place for them to be raising money is when they're expanding internationally. How often do you see that? Is that common that they need to raise money for that, or do you think that companies the companies that you see, do they mostly do it out of their own funds?
Um, According to me and to what I've seen in the past is depends on also on the sector that you're in. So
Mm,
there's certain sectors are really highly funded sectors like biotech or artificial intelligence is becoming more and more a sector that people are looking at where they need to raise money and where you can't raise money. Of course, all people will always suggest like try not to raise money from the start. Try to do it with investors that are close to you, that believe in you, family members even. That's always the first step. But to a certain extent, and then once you notice, okay, we need to raise money, I would say then you have to think of like where are we going to raise money? How are we going to do it? Because you don't want to lose too much say in your company at the beginning. Uh, Canada is, for instance, a very well subsidized country. So there's a lot of subsidies that you can get, grants, subsidies. There's different programs. There's accelerators that you can go to help you with the fundraising at a certain point. But it depends a bit on the sector that you're in, I would say. If you have a product, probably you will have to, yeah, take care of the first few months yourself before going into a fundraiser. If you're in a technology, I would say you're more likely to go look for funds faster.
all right, thank you. So does Boardio help? So you talked about market and competition research. Is that something that Boardio helps with?
Well, I did not come yet to the Boardio presentation, so
Okay,
maybe
all
it's
right,
good to
okay.
go into that right
Um,
now.
well, let me ask a couple other questions,
Yeah.
maybe first. So, how long does the preparation? So you have the preparation to move into another country, and then you have the actual moving into the other country. How long does the preparation part normally take? So this roadmap, I think, is when you're actually moving in. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, the prepar it depends a bit on on where you are with the company at a certain point. But yeah, it's very difficult to put a very strict timeline on how long it takes because it's depending on how fast the company is moving forward. But if, for instance, you're a company in Europe and you want to move to your neighboring country, it's going to be a lot faster than you're going to go up across the pond, let's say, if you go over the Atlantic Ocean, because you will have to consider the costs, of course. A lot is related to the cost. If hiring people will cost you a lot more, you're not going to make that decision very quickly. You're going to first study a little bit and prepare and then make the decision. But if you have somebody, for instance, in France and they want to go to Spain and they have a local person that they know, it's going to be a bit faster. But I would say definitely you'll probably need 3 months, I would say at least, and then build from there. And it might take longer depending on if you're delayed, if something happens, and yeah, there's always unforeseen circumstances that you have, like tariffs, for instance, things like that. Just to name a thing, but yeah. So it really depends, case by case, I would say. Audrey has a question.
Yeah, more a nod to what you were just saying, because what I've experienced when I was working for startups in the med tech is it also, as you said, depends on the sector you're in.
Mhm.
So I guess in the case of SaaS, it's a little bit more easier, but in the case of medtech, for instance,
Yeah.
we were exporting from Europe to Australia and South Africa, and because of the study, and it was a nuclear product, we had to have someone in Australia and in South Africa. We couldn't just, partner with someone because we had to register to the TGA and to SAFRA. So we had to have an official local representative. So we put a country manager in place because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to contact all the reimbursement authorities and so on. So it really, I guess, depends on the sector you're in. And that
Yeah,
adds to the money you need to raise and to the roadmap as a
yeah, that's
whole.
it. So, let's say if you have medtech or biotech companies, if you go to the US, you have to go to FDA
Yeah,
approval.
yeah.
That takes a certain time. If you need to do clinical trials, that takes a certain time. You need to have a number of clinical trials. So it's really difficult. There's no one way of doing this. That's why I
Yeah.
said it's case by case. Yeah, if you go to China, China doesn't allow you to work with your own people, so you have to have a partnership there or a company there. India is the same. They're very reluctant. Japan is also the same. They're very reluctant of they trust Japanese people, but it's very hard to get into a company if you're not Japanese. So it really depends on the market and on the company, I would say. So yeah.
I wouldn't even recommend to go to Japan without a local partner.
Yeah,
That's my experience. 18 years corporate Japan. That's
yeah,
my recommendation. Don't do it on your own. Just
that's
don't.
it.
Great. Thank you. So we've talked about a variety of different differences like that, of different countries and different
Yeah,
between.
what I would say don't rush into like of course preparation says it all. Don't rush into an internationalization plan. Um, Try to get first a few customers in a new market and build from that. I would say like just if you have like let's say five customers in a certain market, okay, is this going to work? There's more potential than if you don't have any customers. I would not suggest companies that do not have customers in a certain market to go to a new market. First, try to
Mm,
spend a little bit of money to test the market before you decide on really opening up a presence, or if you want to even spend money to go to local events or trade shows, or spend the time with a partner, because a partnership also you need to invest some time in that and you need to invest some money in there, because definitely in the US, if you sign a partnership, it doesn't mean that the business is going to flow in like that. It's still you have to cultivate a little bit with the partner. You have to talk to them. You have to see what works, what doesn't work. You have to really follow up with them as well. You need to keep close contact with them, because a lot of partners, they take different products, or they represent different products or services, and they just add it to their portfolio, and you don't know how much time they spent on your product or service. So depending on how it's set up, of course, you could make an exclusivity contract, but still you have to be careful that you're not putting your eggs in one basket, and making sure that you keep your options open as well.
great. Thank you. Maybe we can
So
move on.
maybe I can transition into why I chose to help Boardio, and because what I've noticed in my previous role is that companies have the most struggle with finding customers and really selling in a different country. And I've noticed that because I transitioned from the government to a company in software, and we had that exact same problem. We didn't have any customers, and that was one of the mistakes where I learned from. So that's why I don't recommend going to a country without any customers, because you need to have that one use case. You need to build on the use case. You can twist your marketing around it. You can feed that to people. It's a different approach of having something already versus not having anything. And what Boardio does is they help companies that are at the stage where they say, okay, we have the finances, we can take that step, but we need help locally. So we have a matchmaking platform where a growth company can start a search request to find the right advisor or board member. So, and it can be a search request that um, asks for introductions, for instance, but it could also be if you are looking to raise funds, or if you have specific questions about how do we set up, what are the local regulations. So it could be very diverse depending on what your company needs. So this is our solution to the problem. It's we provide the warm intros. We have a network of about 11,000 advisors. The company has been founded in Finland, so we're very strong in the Nordic market, but also in the Western European market. I'm responsible for Canadian market, which is growing, but also the US market is really well represented. We work on a global scale, but depending on which country you're looking at, we might have more local advisors than uh, like for instance, in Finland, we have like 2,500 advisors. Compared to Canada, we have around 150, which doesn't make sense on a if you would compare. But yeah, and so what do we consider an advisor? An advisor is somebody that can indeed help the companies. They are not um, like they are not members that have a subscription. So the advisors is somebody that works for free. But how does that work in our case? Like for instance, if a company does a search, the only thing they need to pay is a success fee once we find the right advisor. So we are going to introduce them to advisors that apply to their search request. If the company says, okay, we found the perfect person, like for instance, we had a company, they wanted to go to Germany and they were looking to go to work with hospitals. Well, we found an advisor that was on the board of different hospitals within Germany, so they were open to they were able to open access to certain hospitals in Germany very quickly because of that advisor. So if the company finds that right advisor, they pay us a success fee. And then we leave the conversation at that point, and the financial compensation is discussed between the advisor and the company. And that's how we solve the problem of not finding the right people to sell or do the introductions, in fact. So these are some of the use cases. So I already mentioned this. If you want to open a certain door, or if you want to look for funding. Even if you look for board members at a later stage, or maybe your advisor can become your board member, that's also an option. And then this is the process I also just mentioned.
So you would help with, you would help with market competition research in that you would help the person or the company find an advisor who could help them with that.
Yeah.
And so in that respect, you would be helping in that
And
area.
it's very, like, if you would go to our website, which is boardio.com, you can see our opportunities, and you can get like examples. I can also provide sample requests, for instance. And so you just put the details in, what are you exactly expecting from the advisor. So it's very clear. And we ask our advisors to apply. So why do we do this? It's because a company knows that the advisor is more invested in it because he already took a step to really apply to a certain company. So he had to go through their search request, had to fill in a little form with why would he be the best fit to the company. And then how we do it is we set up a kind of an interview day where if we have, let's say, 50 people applying for a certain position, we are going to provide the details of the advisors to the company. They can do a first review. We also do a first review, and then they choose, okay, we want to speak to, let's say, maybe 10 people, maybe 5, maybe 3. And we set up an interview day. The company just shows up, has the interview day, sees if there's a fit, if the connection is there, if they align with what they want to accomplish in a certain region. And then they say, okay, yes or no. And that's how it goes.
And do you have the service of perhaps sitting down with a company and discussing what their goals are and then guiding them as to what
That's
sort?
That's part of the initial conversation that we have.
Okay.
Either they can go on our website, they do the search. The search always needs to be approved by us before it goes on our website. So and the country managers normally are the people that talk to the companies to see, can we maybe put it in a different way or help them if they need it, if they want it, and if they need it, we are there to help them. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. Any other questions?
I see we have not spoken to Gökhan. So maybe, I don't know, Gökhan, if you have, like, maybe you can introduce yourself
Yeah, at least introduce yourself, perhaps.
because you were not there for the introduction, so it would be good to hear from you as well.
Right. You're on mute.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm from Turkey. I live in Ankara. I work with Bilkent University Cyber Park. And we work on roadside assistance business. This sector is, I don't know how to explain it, but the sector does not have any statistic or data here. That's why we decided to produce some data on this sector after after a long field work by me. The approximate market is about above $2 billion here, and it's big money, I guess.
Yeah.
The how for example, sorry for my English, but
It's
by
okay.
the way, the I decided to work on this because there is no data, and the service providers, for example, not too educated, and that caused some problems on field. While they're working, people get upset, and some problems can be how to say, there can be some problems while they are working,
Mm-hmm.
and we want to regulate and dominate the sector here.
Mm-hmm.
No one thought to work on this yet, but we believe we can handle this. Yeah, it's difficult because, as I say, as I said, the service providers and people who work in this sector are not educated.
Mm-hmm.
For example, there are a few people who are not from Turkey, from Syria, from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, and they don't have documents, and it's easy to integrate. It's easy to work in a country after they immigrate. In how to say, it's like doing Uber in the US.
Mm-hmm.
People immigrate to US or the UK or Canada, and in the first, no, how to say, they do easy works
Mm-hmm.
at
Yeah.
first. Yeah, the same thing happens here in roadside assistance business,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe that it's a unique business, and people and service providers must be educated and know how to work, and know how to behave, and need some documentation and something like that. Uh, in
So
conclusion,
you
in
are
conclusion,
trying,
sorry,
yeah, so you are trying to solve the education and integration of workers into
not
Turkey,
not just that, but
also data.
yes, also data. Uh, that was uh, that was an
Yeah.
example of many problems, but the main problem is there is no data in this market. For example, you can find any data in Turkey on grocery market business or food and beverage business.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have heard about Getir.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can
And
find any data you want, but
I
you
know
cannot.
somebody of Getir in the US, by the way. So
Ah, really?
yes, yes, yes.
Uh,
But
there is
so
no.
if you go to a service provider, they do
Mm,
not they do not have any data that you can use to develop what you are trying to accomplish, if I understand correctly.
no, I didn't understand what you
So
mean. I'm sorry.
so in Turkey,
Mm-hmm.
roadside assistance, you have
Mm-hmm.
company A, B, C.
Yes.
They do not have data on like the quality of work that they do or the number of accidents that they attend to or the number of cars that are out there for them.
For example, I can say they have numbers of accidents because when accidents happens,
Hmm.
police and
Yeah,
the the other
fire, fire trucks, maybe,
yeah,
or
government
ambulances.
people can, yeah, can people people can involve the situation,
Hmm.
and that can be calculated.
Yeah.
But other than this, there's no that data. uh, for example, some a tire can blow up, and you may need roadside assistance. Your car can be broken or
Yeah.
etc. Uh, there is just one data uh, from insurance companies,
Hmm.
and all the insurance companies uh, shows their uh, balance sheet, and you can see the market with insurance companies, and you can see some numbers. For example, you have insurance and you call the customer service, and you said uh, you say, I need a tow vehicle, for example,
Hmm.
uh, and they sent you a tow vehicle. It can be calculated, and they write that on their data.
Hmm.
But there are approximately 33 million vehicles in Turkey,
Hmm.
but uh, approximately 24% of all the vehicles have insurance, uh, and the others do not have insurance. That means there is no data for the rest.
Yeah. Hmm.
And uh, after my long field work, I calculated the market size is about $2 billion in Turkey.
Hmm. And what is your company going to solve? Is it going to be an app or is it going to be
Yes,
But
uh,
we're
we.
we're just about out of time. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Uh, but perhaps you two can connect and
I
continue.
I added all of you
Oh,
yeah.
from LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very good.
we can
I've
have.
already accepted your invitation. Thank
Thank
Oh,
thank you very
look at
much.
Yeah.
this.
So
She's
yeah,
on
Thank
top
you
feel
very
of it.
much.
feel free to reach out if you have
Thank
any
you.
questions or you want to run something by. I would speak for all the others as well. If you want to run something by us, feel
Yes,
free
Thank you
to
very
reach
much.
out. And if
absolutely.
you have particular question on how to solve or how to help you, let us know and we'll see how we can help.
Benoit, I've
Thank you so
actually
much.
booked a slot this week with you, so you might see that.
That's fine.
Already, very good.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
That's
Thank
good.
you so much for your presentation. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Thank you
I'm
again
gonna
for having me, Marta. And
absolutely.
again, if any of the members or of the accelerator or from your portfolio, they need help or they have questions or they reviewed the the recording, feel free to let them reach out to me directly or via LinkedIn. That's the best way, probably, I think.
Okay.
I wish I had known this organization a couple of years ago, but it's never too late, Benoit.
That's it.
Never too late to
Never
learn.
too
Yeah.
late. We try to learn every day. We try to learn one thing.
Exactly. Excellent. Thank you so
Very
much for
good.
your
Thank you
time.
so much
You're
for your
welcome.
Thanks so
presentation.
much.
Have a nice evening for those of you in Europe and a good day over there.
Yeah,
Nice evening.
Yes.
the same to you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.